Hey guys, Wadeboshiverson here. This is my video response for the top 10 greatest players of all time by the Pinoymamba, by me, Wadeboshiverson, aka The Godfather. This will also be a Wadeboshiverson on basketball video since it fits in perfectly well. So let's get started. I'm going to keep my, my comments brief on each particular player just for the sake of time here. Alright, number 1, Chris Bosh. 8-time All-Star, 2-time NBA champion. Gonna go down as the greatest player in the history of basketball. That's right, my main man. I expect the Bosh autographs to go up to about $500 an autograph, similar along the lines of Michael Jordan. Anyway, that's number 1, Chris Bosh. Okay, maybe not yet. But maybe someday he won't make it to the top 10 all-time list. But he could be a Hall of Famer, and I love him. So he had to come in the video anyway. Alright, number 10, John Stockton. One of the most underappreciated point guards of all time. Here is a photo of him against Gary Payton, one of the best defensive point guards of all time. Stockton did it all. He was a pass first, get his teammates involved type of point guard. All-time assist leader, of course, and definitely a defensive presence for the Jazz. Shame they didn't win a championship, but he is the 10th best player of all time. Number 9, Julius the Doctor Erving. Incredible player, could rebound, could score, decent amount of passing, and was a defensive presence. We're talking about a small forward who averaged almost 2 blocks a game to go along with 2 steals. So very, very athletic, incredible windmill jams, and pretty much one of the really only main players that you remember from the 70s. There's not a lot of players that go hand in hand with the 70s era basketball. And he's basically the leader of that decade, I think. Number 8, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Actually a power forward who was playing at a position in the center slot. He was the heart and soul of that Rockets team for a long time before finally getting to the NBA championship. Here's a photo of him dunking over Shawn Kemp, since I can't resist putting in as many Sonic photos as possible. But we're talking a guy who was incredible defensively, could block 4 shots a game, and then still score 28, 30 points a game to go along with, 14, 15 rebounds. Just a phenomenal to think that he could average 4 blocks a game, considering he was about 6'10", 6'9", somewhere around there. He was not a 7-footer. He didn't have a lot of athletic capabilities, and his knees were pretty banged up for most of his career. So he was all skill and skill and basketball IQ. That's what I was looking for. He knew the right time to jump in order to block shots as well as score. Number 7, Shaquille the Big Diesel O'Neal. Nobody in the league has ever been quite so dominant with his or her body. Incredible the way he would turn and swing those elbows and just power up shots over people. He might have gotten an offensive foul or 2 that were equally justified, but I'll guarantee you that defender wasn't going to take a second offensive foul against him because of the amount of pain he would put them through. One of the most dominant forces, probably the most dominant force in the game. Dunked over so many people. That was his goal, was to smash the ball down on your face. And he was a big body that clogged up the paint. Wasn't given as much credit for his defense as I think he should be. Teams just didn't go to the paint because he was in there. And, he was going to knock them up on their backside if they did come in there. So I think he was more of a preventative defensive force rather than, a guy who was going to put up 8 block shots a game. Moving on to number 6, Magic Johnson. Probably the best point guard of all time. At least he is on my list. Magic Johnson was the leader of that Lakers team. He is up there in part of his legacy due to HIV and AIDS, I think a lot of the U.S. Came to recognize that AIDS and HIV was not a life-ending issue, and that people with HIV and AIDS are not some people that you have to stay away from. They're not scary monsters or anything. And so I think that was one of the biggest contributions that he made. Also, obviously a pretty decent player. Great passer, and phenomenal to be so big, so tall, and still be able to pass the way he did. And ultimately, he didn't have as much speed as a lot of point guards, and he was still able to defensively be able to keep up with those guys. Used his body and length to his advantage. Really phenomenal player. Number 5, Larry Bird, the guy who goes tandem with Magic Johnson, the greatest rival for Johnson, obviously. Phenomenal guy who could shoot from any distance, put up some ugly shots that for some reason just went in the hoop. That's how crazy Larry Bird was, and would win at all costs, and did so on a regular occasion with Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale, forming one of the greatest dynasties in the history of basketball, arguably the top franchise in the history of basketball being the Boston Celtics. I think the only other competition you could make is the Lakers. Moving on to number 4, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the show-off. I think his legacy is overhyped quite a bit, a lot because of his branding, of his Nike contract, the Jordan brand, the movies he did. This guy is a Hollywood star, and that's why I think his basketball got glorified a little bit. I'm not saying he wasn't a phenomenal player. Obviously, he's number 4 in my countdown, but he's not the best player to ever play the game. People could stop him when they wanted to. He did not have a long-range game at all, and basically if you took his ability to go towards the hoop off, he could be managed. I'm not going to say he was stopped, but he could be managed. And if he had not had so many weapons around him, he would not have won his 6 titles. I think that's for sure. Moving on to number 3, Kareem AbdulJabbar, the skyhook machine. The only guy that had a shot that could not be blocked, no matter who was guarding him, no matter where they were guarding him. Incredible, all-time leading scorer, defensive presence, 7'3" of just lankiness and spider arms. Incredible offensive capabilities and offensive weapon. Dominance is an interesting word. Is it dominance physically like Shaq, or there's dominance finesse like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Just outworked his opponents, grabbed a ton of boards, played forever, well past his prime into his 40s due to some financial issues. But, a lot of fun to watch play, that's for sure. Number 2, Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain. We're talking a guy who scored 100 points in one game. Most teams struggle to score 100 points in a game as a team. He did it by himself in one game while shooting a high percentage from the field. The guy was perennially 60% field goal shooter. He averaged 35 rebounds. 35 rebounds in a season, averaged over 50 points per game. Just incredible. And then one of the most mind-boggling statistics to me about him is that in one particular season, he averaged 9 assists per game, led the league in assists as a center, while still scoring well over 20 points a game, and he was also well past his prime. It's a shame he didn't live longer. It's a shame that he decided to end his career earlier than he needed to. The Lakers refused to pay him the salary he wanted. In my mind, they should have paid him any salary that he wanted. And moving on to number 1, you guys must have guessed it by now, LeBron James. We are talking a guy who can play all 5 positions. He is the best point guard in the league currently. He is the best shooting guard in the league currently. He's the best small forward in the league. He is the best power forward in the league. And he is the best center in the league. Nobody can keep up with him. He has height over almost every player in the NBA. He has athleticism over every player in the NBA. And he is faster than every player in the NBA. Are his skills the best of all time? Maybe not his shooting, but everything else? Oh yes, that guy can block shots, he can defend, he can steal, he can out-hustle, he can outscore anybody in this league. But the thing that sets him apart is his desire to go after the rebound, after the boards, and to pass the ball. He gets his teammates involved. He gets the very best out of his teammates. We are talking about a guy who took Donyell Marshall as his second best player and Mo Williams to the NBA Finals. You have got to be kidding me. Donyell Marshall as the number 2 best player on your team. Most teams would be looking like the Charlotte Bobcats if they had Donyell Marshall as the second best player on their roster. This guy is incredible. Last finals, Dwayne Wade, terrible hobbled knees. Chris Bosh didn't put up anything offensively, and he won the NBA championship against a very talented San Antonio Spurs team. Number 1 overall best player of all time, right there, LBJ Lebron James. Anyway, guys, that'll do it. Big thanks to the Pinoymamba for putting on the contest. It was a great idea, and it was fun to make this video. Anyway, guys, talk to you later. See ya.